everybody. You're going to get a little bit more technical than the last couple of talks, but I'll try to keep it light as much as I can, and certainly the next talk will get back to some more exciting things, I think. Although the technical stuff is also very exciting, as I hope that you'll see. So, first off, my name is Andrew Poelstra. I am the Director of Research at a company called Blockstream, which has been around in the Bitcoin industry doing low-level Bitcoin research, applied cryptographic research since 2014. I've been in the Bitcoin space since 2011, working on cryptography since 2013, mostly maintaining the libsecv 256K1 library, which is used to do the digital signatures to verify and sign all of the transactions that are done in Bitcoin, and also, in a bunch of other clones of Bitcoin and non-clones of Bitcoin and other things that are out there. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is primarily scripts on Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about how Bitcoin script works, how it can be used, what it means for users, and I'm also going to talk about a system called Liquid that we're working on at Blockstream. Liquid is called a sidechain. Liquid has a scripting system the same as Bitcoin's, but we've added a few extra opcodes that hopefully one day will make them into Bitcoin. And I'll talk about some cool things that we can do with that. So, first off, let me explain, just to set the stage, what Liquid is, and then we can talk about script. We can talk about why anyone would care about Liquid, and certainly why anyone would care about Liquid's scripting system. So first off, Liquid is a sidechain. What is a sidechain? It is a blockchain that has a cryptographic peg, or I guess any peg, but ours is cryptographic, meaning that there's a when you move coins. Well, first off, a sidechain is a blockchain where you can move coins, by peg, between Bitcoin and between Liquid. So there's still Bitcoins when they're on Liquid, but it's a totally separate blockchain. A new blockchain, not a new asset. That's the important thing. And this lets us do a lot of blockchain technical experimentation without having to generate a new asset and deal with market making and deal with moral hazards and deal with all sorts of awful stuff. So we have what's called the cryptographic peg, which means you can move coins onto the system. The system recognizes that you have locked the Bitcoins on the Bitcoin blockchain, and then they become active on the Liquid blockchain. When you move coins back, then you do the inverse. So then you have Bitcoins that were on the Bitcoin chain, just sort of locked, representing Liquid coins. You move them back onto Bitcoin from Liquid, and now the Liquid coins go away on the Liquid chain, and the Bitcoin ones become active. So you got that movement there. So the point of this system, or I should say the benefit of the system, is that the Liquid blockchain has many features that are not in Bitcoin, or I should say not yet in Bitcoin. So historically, Liquid had SegWit before Bitcoin did. It's a little known fact. Bitcoin had a few Bitcoin opcodes. There's opcsv, which some of you are familiar with. This is used to do time locks to make coins that can't move until a certain amount of time has passed. That was also on Liquid. It later moved to Bitcoin. Right now, Liquid has something called confidential transactions, which would be a much more difficult sell for Bitcoin. But what that does is it hides the amounts in all of the transactions. So you can verify cryptographically that your transaction is balanced, but you don't see what the amounts are. And this is a technology that you may have heard of from like Monero and Dash and Grin and these various things. It was on Liquid first. We developed it at Blockstream back in 2015. The other cool thing that we're going to focus on for this talk is that Liquid has a bunch of new script opcodes. In particular, we have some script opcodes that let you do something called covenants. And I'm going to talk about what that means in a sec. So, yeah, let's jump into this. So from this point on, I'm going to kind of veer back. We're going to talk about Bitcoin for a little while and just come back to Liquid at the end and demonstrate some of the cool stuff that we can do with our Liquid opcodes that hopefully one day we'll be able to do in Bitcoin. So I've been talking about Bitcoin script. What is Bitcoin script? Well, a lot of you are familiar with Bitcoin. If you've used Bitcoin, you're familiar with Bitcoin addresses, right? And you may be familiar with there being a key, right? These addresses somehow represent a cryptographic key. You have a public key, which somehow is embedded in the address, and you've got a secret key, which is on your hardware wallet, or it's on something. Somehow it's on a secure system, and the secret key never leaves your system, right? And they're related mathematically in some way. So you can generate signatures with your secret key, and anyone can verify the signatures with the public key, right? So what's going on under the hood is kind of cool. There's actually a bit of indirection here. What your Bitcoin address represents is not exactly a key, but rather a script telling the Bitcoin blockchain that if those coins move, somebody needs to check a signature. Everybody needs to check a signature with this key, and that signature needs to cover the contents of the transaction. And the script system, though, can do more things than just check a signature with this key, right? It doesn't have to be one key, one coin, one signature kind of deal. What script can do is certainly checks with any signatures. It can also check hash locks, which are requiring the user to publish a secret that hashed it to some fixed value. And this is used a lot in the Lightning Network to connect payment channels to each other. Where you move some coins on one payment channel, the script system forces you to reveal a secret, which you can then copy from one payment channel to the other, and that way you make the payment channels atomic with each other. You get these long paths routing coins all over the place. You can also do time locks. Time locks are important for any of this stuff to work, where a time lock is a way to say that the coins aren't allowed to move until a certain amount of time has passed, until a certain number of blocks have passed since the coins were confirmed, or just some absolute number of time has passed since the world started. And you need this to do multi-party systems, because what you need in any multi-party contract, and like a payment channel or something, is that if one party disappears, the other party can get their coins back, right? You don't want the coins to just be trapped. You don't want to like enter into an agreement where you both have to sign to move the coins, and if the other guy leaves, then you're in the lurch, right? So a time lock lets you say, well, as long as we're moving quickly, as long as we're signing stuff, the payment channel can be updated, the lightning path can move coins, things go well. If somebody disappears, you have this time-locked emergency clause, and the coins can come back to its original owner, right? And that's how these are used. And then finally, I have this point, monotone function of the above, and that's a bit of a technical term. It's actually fairly straightforward. What it means is you can have ands and ors of all of the above. You have these three kinds of checks, and you can combine them. You can say you have to do these checks and these checks. You can combine them saying you can do these checks or these checks and make kind of arbitrary trees of ands and ors and checks and stuff. And we'll see a couple pictures of this in a couple of slides. So the Bitcoin script system can do a whole ton of stuff. Like it's really very general purpose. It's very powerful. But in practice, this is what users use it for. These three things and combinations of them cover payment channels. They cover escrow systems. They cover split custody. They cover all sorts of interesting stuff, right? And this is, in practice, what you want from your blockchain layer. So the way the script works, and I'm not going to give you examples of the script, but I'm just going to tell you, it's kind of this assembler-like language. You have these very fixed purpose opcodes that the Bitcoin system executes all in a row. Each one of them manipulates these opaque blobs of data in very low-level ways. So I'm talking about checking signatures, I'm talking about revealing secrets, I'm talking about waiting and stuff. What the script system is doing is sees some blob of data, you run it through an opcode, and it's transformed in some way. And some of these opcodes check signatures, other of them like rearrange the blobs in various ways. But the important thing is that the script model, opaque blobs of data moving through this sort of stack-based engine, does not match the user model. As a user, you think the coins should move if I sign for them. Or maybe the coins move if like 3 of these 5 people sign for them. Or maybe if I pull like 3 of my 5 keys out of like various holes in trees around the world or something, right? Or maybe the coins will move if the payment channel is updated, right? This is a high level. You have sort of a list of conditions for moving the coins, right? Not if you go through this like song and dance, then in the end, if the song and dance leaves a 1 on the stack, the coins move. If it's a 0, they don't move. But that's how script thinks. So I'm going to talk about miniscript. And what miniscript is kind of a reinterpretation of script that lets you write Bitcoin script in a way where you have the user model at your disposal, where you can kind of draw your script as these trees of conditions connected by ands and ors. And then that's translated by some fairly general purpose software into the actual script. But you don't have to worry about that as a user. You don't even have to worry about that as a developer. And that's where this stuff gets cool, because it lets wallet developers interoperate with each other without needing to understand everything that they're all doing, right? If you have a wallet that's doing something more interesting than just 1 key, 1 coin kind of thing, right now, if you're doing multi-sig stuff, everybody's got to do like wrap up their own kind of multi-sig implementation, or their own like claim or refund implementation, or their own escrow or split custody or whatever. With miniscript, you can describe all of these things just as these trees. Everybody understands each other's trees. You look at them as a human, they're good. You can analyze them as a computer. You can do so what's called statically, efficiently. You can be assured that the trees of spending conditions actually match what the spending conditions that you want for the coins to move, right? So, what is miniscript? Well, on a low level, and I promise this is the most technical slide, by the way. If you're looking at this and your eyes are glazing over, you're welcome to just sort of let them glaze over, and then I'll have pictures after this. But miniscript is a set of, quote, composable script templates for sig checks, ands, ors, hash checks, time lock checks. Sort of 6 things, right? Sig, hash, time lock, and, or, threshold. And a threshold is like 3 of 5 of these different conditions. So there are 2 benefits to miniscript that I'm kind of been hinting at. One is that it's, quote, syntactically composable. What this means is that these different fragments, these different pieces of script, fit together like Legos. If you're a developer, you can have one condition and another condition and an OR, and you just slot the conditions into the OR, and it will work. This is not true of script. In script, every opcode has its own weird idiosyncrasies and weird quirks. And because the opcodes don't know that you're talking about signatures, and they don't know that you're talking about hashes or anything, and they don't know that you're talking about numbers, they'll interpret anything as anything. And if you're trying to fit different script pieces together, they might interpret each other's output in wrong ways, and your script will just do gibberish. And do gibberish means your coins get stolen, to be clear. Like it's really, or worse, well, either somebody else takes them or nobody, including you, will be able to take them, basically. But that, either way is not what you want, right? So for a wallet developer, what you care about is the syntactic composability, that these things clip together, and they're not going to do surprising things when you try to connect them. What we care about as users, though, is that they're semantically composable. And what that term just means is that when I say and when I say or, they mean what you expect when I say and when I say or. If you have this thing and this thing, then both of them need to be satisfied. If you have this thing or this thing, then at least one of the 2 needs to be satisfied. That's what and means, that's what or means. You won't have a case where like you have this thing, and where like if one of those, if it was structured in the right way, like somehow it could undermine the and then suddenly you can avoid the other half of the requirement or something like that. That's not the case. The semantic composability. Things fit together, they fit together in the way that you expect. So this developed originally at Blockstream in 2019 by Peter Wulla, who I think many of you know, Sanket Kandolkar, who was an intern at Blockstream at the time, and now he's a researcher, and also myself. Originally, actually, just as a way to simplify our mess of script unit tests and to like clean up our own code. And through the course of development, we realized that actually this was a much more general thing, that we could use this for making wallets interoperate with each other. We could use this to make script understandable to people. We could use this to develop applications on Bitcoin, like escrow or like payment channels or like split custody or like Liquid or like the way the peg works in Liquid in a way where you could convince someone that the script was legitimate, right? Right now, by far, the most common kind of interesting use of script are Lightning payment channels, these HTLCs, right? And Lightning is developed by a group of a few hundred incredibly smart Bitcoin developers and other blockchain developers who have been working on this over the course of years, right? If you're someone just running a wallet company who wants to do like split custody or something, you're not going to hire hundreds of people to work on it for years just to get a system that nobody else would ever trust, because they also need hundreds of people over years to verify that it works, right? It's just that's not going to fly. So miniscript looks like this. So I'm not even going to show you the opcodes and stuff. I'm going to show you what a miniscript looks like. And the cool thing here is that there is actually some technical noise here. You can see I've got these subscripts, these like little C's and little V's and stuff. And I got these V's and B's. And if you are a developer, maybe you care about what these mean. What these there are to indicate how the pieces fit together syntactically, how the Legos fit together, whether it's a 1x2 piece or like a 2x3 piece or something like that. As a user, you don't care about any of the small stuff. What you care about is you can see, for example, at the bottom, we've got a couple public keys. It's PK1 and PK2. Those are public keys. And you can see you've got an OR of those. Either PK1 needs to sign or PK2 needs to sign. At the top, you've got this and, so both halves of this need to be satisfied. So if coins are protected by this miniscript that I've drawn here, you can see you've got sort of these 2 conditions that are satisfied. First off, you've got a choice of PK2 or PK1. And in addition to that, PK3 needs to sign initially. But after the coins are 1,000 blocks old, then actually you get this other option. You can take the older 1,000 branch, and the coins can move without PK3. So PK3 there is kind of like his job is to react quickly and help move the coins. And after 1,000 blocks, presumably he's done something wrong and he's out, is the idea here. And you can see, like, I could explain this to you with a slide, with a picture. I can point at stuff. This is really exciting, because if I were to show you the raw script that was doing this, I would need, probably a notebook and several hours, and we'd have to go through a huge song and dance. And probably by the end, I'm not convinced that I would be able to convince anyone that what I had done was secure, that there's no way that you could secretly steal the coins, because it would just be a mess of gibberish. Whereas here I've got a picture, right? You trust a picture? And even the way that the technology works, the way the software works, it actually interprets the picture too. You can just go left to right, through all of these different branches. It understands the ors, it understands the ands, and it will tell you, if you ask it a question like, well, I represent PK3, is it possible to spend the coins without me? And it will tell you, well, yes, after the coins are 1,000 blocks old, no otherwise, right? And that's the kind of question you would ask as a user trying to use a system like this. And with script, you couldn't answer it. With miniscript, it's very straightforward, both if you're doing it in an automated way or if you're doing it visually. Okay, so the benefits, to sort of summarize what I just said there, for developers of miniscript, kind of the big benefit is that you have, where you interact with script is in verifying that every one of those nice colors, all of those little rounded squares there, you have to verify that each of those squares represents a short little script fragment, 2 or 3 opcodes. You can do that. Script sucks, but you can deal with 2 or 3 opcodes at a time, right? For users and for wallet developers, well, for wallet developers, it's great that these are easy to construct, right? You can fit these together and you can define a policy that represents the kind of wallet that you want your users to have. Then as a user, the benefit is that you can look at the policy in the form of this picture and just work with it. And then the benefit for the ecosystem is that we can write general purpose tooling that works with these miniscripts. You can just see any tree like this, and no matter what kind of weird policy you're trying to implement, you've got it, right? The software will tell you that the policy is what you expect. Not only can you read the policy, but you have assurance that the policy matches what's on the blockchain, right? And both of those, you can't do either with script. You can't read it, and even if you could, you can't verify that it's what you thought you read. So I'm going to move away from Bitcoin, although hopefully not too far. Maybe I'm going to move to Bitcoin in the future, in 2 or 3 years. And I'm going to talk about something called covenants. Okay, so I'm kind of changing subjects here a little bit. So covenants are a proposal to extend Bitcoin script, to allow it to constrain the destination of coins within a transaction. And what do I mean by that? I mean, the way that script works today is you can set conditions for the coins to move. You say signature checks, all that. But once those conditions are met, the coins go wherever people want. If the people who are signing want the coins to go into a black hole, they can send them into a black hole. If they want them to go to wherever, they can send them there. What you can't do is put a script that says, I only want at most 1 Bitcoin a day to move out of this script. Or you can't say, I want some of these coins to move to this address and the rest can go back into the script or go elsewhere or something. You couldn't do something like a trade where you say, well, I want these coins to move to anywhere, but only if some other coins move to this destination or a certain payment channel is updated or something happens off chain or something like that. You just can't. You have no control over the destination. So covenants is the idea that you could control the destination from script. And if you do this, you can enable various applications that have been floated over the years, right? You can do vaults, which is where you sort of with velocity limits, you say the coins can move, but they have to go to a staging area for a day or 2 before they're allowed to go anywhere else. And then if you're the rightful owner and somebody has stolen your keys, you can kind of step in and try to reverse that. You can do colored coins, which are sort of like ERC20 tokens, but they were around much long before. You can do velocity limits, as I said. There are a few other things that you might be able to do. And since 2012, 2013, there have been various proposals for how to put this into Bitcoin. And there's always some controversy either about covenants themselves, and I'm not going to dive into that, but a lot of people are kind of scared of covenants because it creates the ability to kind of permanently encumber Bitcoin, or individual Bitcoins, I should say, not the network, but individual coins. You could say put a covenant on them that said these coins have to say that Andrew is the best developer forever and ever in every single output they're in. I could do that, and if you want my coins, the script will make you say that. The other piece of controversy is just on the technical layer, how do we do this? So there's been various proposals, and again, I'm not going to go into that. But the interesting question for the purpose of this talk, though, is suppose that Bitcoin had covenants, and spoiler, Liquid has covenants, and this is sort of where I'm going with this. What would that do to miniscript? Well, it's kind of a weird, I'm going to have to be a little bit technical again. The weird thing about introducing covenants is that we lose semantic composability. And if you remember, that's the one that I said you care about, right? Syntactic composability, that's for developers. It means stuff works. Semantic composability means that your ands and ors mean what you expect them to. And kind of the weird thing with covenants is that you get this kind of non-local behavior. And what I mean by that is if you have a giant tree like what I wrote, let's actually go back to this tree. Imagine that over here, PK1 said these coins are only allowed to go to address A. And PK3, rather than being a public key, said these coins are only allowed to go to address B. Well, now your miniscript has an AND at the top where the coins have to go both to public to address A and to address B. That's impossible, right? It's logically impossible. So now when you are constructing a miniscript, you have this kind of scary situation where you can't just focus on one side of the miniscript, right? You can't say, well, I care about the left side, and I see there's an AND there, so it doesn't matter what's on the other side, right? My side will be enforced. That's no longer necessarily true with covenants. So that's one scary thing. It complicates the analysis. Fortunately, nowhere near to the level of complexity of directly working with script, but it complicates the analysis, so it's something that we would have to be very careful with. The cool thing, though, is that we retain the syntactic composability. You can still draw trees and still fit things together in these trees and describe all the different conditions that you want. So if you have a vault or if you have some complicated covenant script, you can at least draw the tree and convince yourself that the tree makes sense, even if you have to look at all parts of it at the same time. Okay? And the cool thing, kind of the punchline of this, is that Liquid has a way to do covenants, where we have two opcodes. They're called cat and checksig from stack, if you're interested in Googling us and looking into it. And for Liquid, we have a fork of the miniscript project called Elements Miniscript, which actually adds some new script fragments that use covenants. And doing that, we can get these kind of like pretty picture trees. We can do things that you can do with covenants in a way that's tractable. No longer doing it in a way where you have multiple geniuses working for years trying to build something that they then can't convince anybody else in the world that it works, right? So I'm going to kind of just like skip over this pretty much. On a technical level, though, here's what Elements Miniscript adds right now. We have this new kind of descriptor which forces the user, or I should say the spender of the coins, to put all the transaction data onto the stack, meaning that the transaction data, all the inputs, all the outputs, all the amounts, all the destinations, all the addresses, all of that is on the stack and available to script. And then we add some new fragments, so those PKs and the hashes and ands and ors and stuff, we have some new fragments that are able to look at that data and require that it equals some value. And what that means in English is you can write a miniscript where you say, well, the coins have to go here. And that's something you can't do in Bitcoin. That's something you can't do in script, you can't do in miniscript. Okay? So here's an example. I'm going to briefly go over this, and I'm going to describe like how you might hypothetically create a call option on Bitcoin. Well, I should be careful here. A call option on a version of Bitcoin with covenants, and also a version of Bitcoin that had the ability to support different assets beyond just Bitcoin. And I don't mean like ERC20 tokens. I kind of do, but I mean these sort of ephemeral kind of dummy assets that are able to be used in the script to affect certain mechanisms. So real quick, I should define what an option is, what a call option is. What this is in traditional finance is a contract that gives somebody the right, but not the obligation, to buy Bitcoin at a certain price in the future. So right now the price of Bitcoin is what, 37K or whatever it is. You can, on various platforms out there, write a contract that gives someone the right to buy Bitcoin from you at 50K in December of this year, say, so in 6 months. And this is kind of cool for you if you're writing this contract, right? Because Bitcoin's 38K, you're letting someone buy it for you for 50K, so you're getting a good price, although in December. But the counterparty, the person who's taking this contract, actually benefits as well, right? Because they think, hey, maybe Bitcoin goes to like 1 million, then I'm going to get it at 50K. And I mean, if it doesn't, then I'm just out this stupid option. So somebody, there are actually open orders on various order books out there, somebody will pay you like 8,000 bucks a coin for the right to buy Bitcoin from you in 6 months for a price that's higher than it is now. And that's what an option is. So the way that this works as a contract, right, is you have, the contract says, come December 23rd or whatever the last Friday of December is, but before New Year's, the person who holds the option contract is allowed to purchase Bitcoin at this price. And if they do not, then the option expires, it just goes away. So there are kind of three ways that an option contract can die. And so when I'm talking about like ephemeral ERC20 tokens, kind of the spoiler is I'm going to create an asset that I'm calling OPT, this little option thing, that just exists for a short period of time, and it's just used to facilitate this. There are three ways that an option contract dies. Either it's canceled, right? You close out the position, you sell, you write an option contract, then you buy it out, and it cancels out and goes away. Or it expires. We get to December, and Bitcoin's still at like 49,999, so nobody wants to buy it from you for 50K, right? And then it goes away. Or it's exercised, meaning Bitcoin is at 50,001, so someone's going to actually buy it from you at 50K, and you're out $1, or 9.995 million, however high the price goes, right? You lose out on that difference. So we can model this in miniscript, using covenants, using these extra kind of restricting addresses. So what this miniscript here is it represents a script that is holding the Bitcoins. So in this example, we're going to do a Bitcoin call option at 50K. In order to write a Bitcoin call option, you need to lock up the coins. So let's say I'm locking up one Bitcoin, saying come December, either I have to sell that coin, or the option expires and I get it back. You can also do options where you don't lock up the coin. That's called a naked option. That's a form of levered instrument. Leverage does not interact well with contract systems on platforms that are sound. Because what leverage means is that somebody is promising to make you whole, and somebody promising to make you whole is not trustless. So nothing's naked, nothing's levered, everything is fully collateralized. That means the Bitcoin's locked. How is it locked? Well, it's locked on the blockchain by a script that is represented by this miniscript, which has these three different options. And this B here means beneficiary. So you have this option token, which represents holding the contract. And you can move the coins. This is a bit tricky. There's two assets here. There's the Bitcoins controlled by the script, and there's option, which is just some dumb token. Either going from, I guess, left to right, either you cancel the option. So this is this burn thing. You destroy the option contract, and then the collateral, the underlying Bitcoin, just goes to the beneficiary. It's over. It's just undone. The second case is the exercise case. And this is kind of cool. So here we're going to introduce a new asset, US dollars, okay, like Tether or USDC or something like that. And here you destroy the options contract, but in doing so, you send a payment to the beneficiary, and the coins are unconstrained. You just take the coins if you're the one exercising this on the blockchain. And then finally, the third example, or the third kind of endpoint, is that the option expires. So the price of Bitcoin wasn't high enough, nobody wants the option, so it just goes away. And just like if you cancel the option, the collateral just goes back to the beneficiary, okay? Beneficiary, well, this is a script, it's on the blockchain, it's confirmed, right? So the beneficiary has to be a fixed address. If you're familiar with options markets, this kind of sucks. You don't want an option contract that has a fixed person who gets the money at the end, because that makes it difficult to have a functioning market. What you want is a person who's negative the option should be able to transfer that short position around and be able to trade that basically as though it were a negative option. So the way you do that is by another miniscript, which is this. So I'm going to introduce another asset, another ephemeral asset, the beneficiary asset. And this is an NFT. This is just one of these that's floating out there per option contract. And what this miniscript says is that in order to move the coins, in order to move anything that you send to this address, this burn Benny address, you have to burn the benefit token. You have to destroy the NFT. And the cool thing is that you can then just pass that NFT around. You can trade it. This NFT kind of represents a short option position. You trade it around, and then whenever anyone sends coins to this address, the person holding the NFT will destroy it in a transaction that will be enforced by the script, and then they can activate. And then they can take the coins. And the cool thing is there's no restriction on the coins themselves, right? You send it to your own address. So there are many other things that are required to build a functioning options market. Like, I'm not here to demo an options market or anything. I'm here to demonstrate miniscript, and I'm here to demonstrate what you can do with miniscript on Liquid that you can't do on Bitcoin. And so I'm going to sort of wrap up here. I'm going to briefly hint at some future directions, and then close, and I can probably take a couple questions I'm out of time, but we're a little bit ahead, so maybe I can take some questions. So real quick, simplicity is where, unlike miniscript, simplicity is not based on Bitcoin script. It's not designed to work with existing software. It's not designed to make things interoperable. Simplicity is a whole cloth re-implementation of Bitcoin script designed to be reasoned about formally, mathematically, in ways that Bitcoin script was not. So rather than having a bunch of opaque opcode that are full of weird idiosyncrasies, many of which come down to idiosyncrasies in the C++ language, you now have a set of sort of coherently, a small set of coherently designed opcodes that are designed to fit together and allow you to write contracts that you can make mathematical statements about and then prove them formally using mathematical models. And if I were doing a talk about simplicity, I could probably spend hours just going on that, but I'm not going to here. So the takeaway, though, miniscript is on Bitcoin today. There's an extension of miniscript that's on Liquid today. Simplicity will be on Liquid sometime soon, in the next 2 years. No, it should be this year. I hope it's this year. But there's certainly, as with everything, building these giant systems. And because I'm an engineer, I'm refusing to commit to dates. But soon, I promise. And maybe one day simplicity would be deployed on Bitcoin. But this is really a far future. This is really like a massive pie-in-the-sky project. This is not something that I can advocate for Bitcoin today, unlike some other things. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I'll just leave this slide up, but thank you. Thank you all for coming. Can I take some questions? I think so. I'll probably take one or two. Can I? One? Okay, I can take one. All right. So the question is about how Taproot kind of interacts with all of this stuff, right? So what the privacy benefit of Taproot is that it hides the script that you're using. So the cool thing about Taproot is that in the case that you have some complicated contract, if everyone who's party to the contract agrees that the contract has been satisfied, there's no need for script. There's no need for the blockchain to be adjudicator. So in Taproot, you have just a single key that can represent multiple parties, and it commits to some complicated script. So this big tree that I drew there, in Taproot, that tree is not actually visible on the blockchain unless it's needed, is kind of the cool thing. So in some sense, this is like the opposite of Taproot in terms of privacy. I'm talking about cool things you can do if you have an explicit script where you've written down all the options. Taproot hides it all. Taproot's goal is that in by far the most common case where everyone who has a PK somewhere in that script says the coins can move, you don't ever see it. You have this big tree of stuff, no one ever sees it. You can be assured that it's not going to surprise you, but also you're not going to use it. It's not going to hit the blockchain. What'll hit the chain is one key, one signature. So they sort of opposite sides of the script world, I guess. So thanks, I think. All right, we've got to wrap up now. So thank you again. I'll see you around.